Let me introduce you to our session today. It is Medicare Part D in 2025. And I would like to introduce you to our wonderful speaker, Dr. Cynthia Griffin, who serves as Vice President of Medicare Pharmacy Programs with Florida Blue Medicare. Dr. Griffin, welcome.
Good morning, and good morning to everyone who's on the call this morning. It's really an exciting time in Medicare Part D, and I'm happy to be able to share with you this morning some of the exciting changes that will be occurring in Medicare Part D in 2025. As I reflect on Medicare Part D, I started working with Medicare and particularly Medicare Part D since its inception in 2006. And at that time, there were 4 phases of coverage that we'll talk about a little bit more as we go through the presentation. But there was always the desire to close what's called the coverage gap or the donut hole. And here, some 19 years later, we're finally excited to say that in 2025, that donut hole will be closing. And it is particularly interesting in terms of the timing because it is now that we're starting to see a lot of the baby boomers aging into Medicare. So the timing of the changes is really critical to support access and affordability of prescription drugs. So then what's happening in 2025? Many of you may be aware of the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. And while the Inflation Reduction Act was not solely focused on prescription drug use, many of the components of it were related to energy and energy efficiency. Medicare was a part or is a part of the IRA, as we call it, or the Inflation Reduction Act. And so one of the key components of the Inflation Reduction Act is no more coverage gap. And I know many seniors and are really excited about this because not in addition to that coverage gap, sometimes presenting a financial hardship to individuals, it was a little bit difficult for people to understand when they made it to the coverage gap and why their drug cost was changing midway during the year when they had not made necessarily any changes in their drug therapy. So there will be no more coverage gap, or what was referred to as the donut hole. The Medicare beneficiaries' out-of-pocket spending will be capped at $2,000. And then there will be the introduction of what's called a Medicare prescription drug payment plan, which we affectionately call as M3P. So what's happening then in 2025? The Part D benefit will be greatly simplified. There will be 3 stages of coverage, potentially. The first stage would be a deductible stage, and not all plans have a deductible, but if you are enrolled in a plan or if a beneficiary is enrolled in a plan that has a deductible, that deductible will have to be satisfied before they move into the initial coverage phase. The deductible is included as a part of the $2,000 maximum out-of-pocket, to note. Then the beneficiary moves into the initial coverage phase. They will stay in that initial coverage phase until that $2,000 maximum out-of-pocket is met. They move into what's called a catastrophic phase. And even though that means something for us as the health plan, as the government, and as the pharmaceutical manufacturers, there is no financial impact for a beneficiary who's enrolled in Medicare Part D. So let's go to the next slide. So again, the beneficiary or member cost share will be capped at $2,000 per year, starting in 2025. And once that $2,000 is met, there is no more cost for prescription drugs for the rest of the year. And just a little bit of clarity or something to note about the drug costs. There are some drugs that are covered under the pharmacy benefit, which is the Medicare Part D. There are also some drugs that's covered under the medical benefit, which is Part B. So, for example, if a drug has to be administered by a provider, either in the provider's office or at a treatment center, and it is covered or eligible for coverage under the medical benefit or Part B, the plan may still require a cost share of those. Currently, the federal allowance for that or requirement for that, as well as most of the Medicare Advantage plans, is a 20% cost share. And I know that that may get to be a little bit confusing when you say that the drug cost is going to be capped at $2,000. But when we speak of this $2,000 cap, we're only talking about those drugs that are covered under the pharmacy or the Part D benefit.